Hello, friends. It's Lisa Williams, the Chief Inspiration Officer here at Perfect Side Gigs. And welcome to our interview series, Corporate to Entrepreneur. We are hearing, oh my goodness, so many cool stories of people that have been very, very brave and made that leap themselves. And today we have a very special human, Mr. Calvin Wayman. Now, Calvin, he describes himself as just a regular guy. But he's now an author, an entrepreneur, and he's actually in the midst of his own case study right now, The Making of a Millionaire, which I just absolutely love. I can't wait to hear about that. But it wasn't always so easy for Calvin. In 2015, he was in a ton of debt. He was sad. He was in a place that he was not feeling his best self. And yet he had the brave task of creating a new vision for himself. And even though he had a 1-year-old and was married, he actually left corporate and in a very fast time has created amazing success. So Mr. Calvin Wayman Wick, thank you and welcome to our show.
I am so pumped to be here, Lisa. The group that you're talking to, that this whole series is for, is like near and dear to my heart, because those are the people that I feel like are going to really make the biggest changes in our world, to go put their mark on the world from corporate to entrepreneurs. So I'm pumped to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to start by, I just kind of like to get personal straight away. And
Let's jump in.
you're not afraid to talk about struggle that you faced and, you know, the adversity. And I just would love to hear a little bit about that, but even more importantly, what people will get if they actually, you know, persevere through that
Oh, good
and
question.
find something for
Yeah.
themselves.
So there's a line that really rings true to me that I first heard from Tom Bilyeu. He says something like, "The struggle is guaranteed, but the success isn't." Something along those lines. And when you're making this transition, that's completely true. And I think it's a very important conversation to have, because there's the part that needs to be said, which is, if somebody's looking to make that transition, there's a reason they're making that transition. It's probably because there's this calling inside of them to make a difference in the world. And I think people are already to that point. They're like, yeah, I know there's some mark I'm meant to make on the world. So you have the motivation to act, to jump, to go after it. But what I think is actually not talked about enough is what you're bringing up, and that is the struggle, because there is going to be that. And I think it's a healthy thing to talk about, not an unhealthy thing, because I don't find it negative. I find it's almost like if you're going into a jungle, you want to know that you're going to face a certain type of really thick, foresty type area you're gonna have to really know how to have your machete skills, or there's gonna be some goblins or something. Like, you don't want to be off guard. And so the struggle, as meme-ified as it is, the struggle is very real when you get started. And we can go deeper on what some of those might look like. But just in a more general sense, you're gonna have them. But I mean, what's on the other side of it? Well, you can dream what you want, but tasting it's even better. And when you're on the other side of the struggle, I mean, one thing that always helped me through some of the darkest times was realizing that if this whole experience was like a basketball game or whatever sport you want, the clock doesn't hit 0 and game over until you say it is. So sometimes you feel like you're down. Sometimes it feels like it's 5 seconds left at the end of the fourth quarter and you're down by 20 points. But the magical thing is recognizing you can keep adding time to the clock and you can keep going, and it's not over until you say it is. And if you do that and stay in the game, then you cannot help but eventually win. So whatever that winning is for you, it's there. It's inevitable if you stay in the game long enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I really believe we're all meant to have a number of iterations of ourselves. And I think so many people, they start with one and they don't continue. You know, what's been
Agreed.
your experience about, like, how could you wake those people up? You know, give us some ideas.
So the people that they end up just coasting because they don't really tap into that part of themselves.
Right, right.
Man, it's to me this. I don't know how useful this is going to be because it goes to the cliche stuff that you see from a lot of motivational videos. Like friends of mine, like there's this a cool video from Eric Thomas. It's like teaches how do you get the success, and he tells this whole story of taking somebody out to the water, sticking their head under, pulling them up, and saying, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful, right?
Mm.
I, I, I don't know how to give that to people. I don't know how to give people the thing to want it. The only thing I can think of is thinking way more long term, because we live in such a fast paced environment, and sometimes I think people are always making the very best decisions for themselves at any given point. This is one of my, if somebody says, what's an idea, what's a belief that you believe that it might be controversial? I think most people, 99.9% of people, are always making the best decision. The only difference is if it's the best decision for the short term or the long term. That's
Mm,
it.
right.
And I think a lot of those people are probably making the very best decision for themselves for the short term, maybe for comfort, maybe for afraid of what's going to happen. But if you could only see the long term, what you could be, then you might behave differently. So the only thing I would say for that person to wake them up is, it might sound like gruesome or whatever, but imagining your deathbed and looking back.
Yeah.
What do you want? Because yes, you might fail. This is what helped me finally jump. When I was wondering if I was going to do it, I was imagining looking back, and I was like, yes, I might fail. I might fall flat on my face, but what
Mhm.
if I didn't even try? And that imagining that feeling of regret that I didn't even know what would happen if I didn't even try, that feeling of regret is what made me say, screw it, I'm going to do it. So thinking more long term and looking back and seeing if you would regret if you never tapped into or searched, even just searched that version of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you know that the idea that you had was good? Like, do you have a process that you go through?
Didn't.
You didn't
Uh-uh.
know.
Didn't. No, this is huge. In fact, I think this is something that gets people stuck. I
Yeah.
know people watching this right now have so much fire and so much passion to do something. They're like, I know I hate my job. They know that they're meant to do something more, but what's my passion? Like, what is my passion towards? What's my thing? You know, this is where I think faith comes in,
Mm.
because I'm a big believer in we're conditioned to think I think it's our brain trying to keep us alive. You could call it the way we were educated in school systems, thinking there was one right answer. I believe we're conditioned to want to know every step A through Z, and that makes us freeze. So here's what helped me. This was like a huge realization that made me start moving. You don't need to know every step of the way. You don't need to know A through Z. You just need to know A, B, and Z. Like, you need to know those three letters. So what's Z? Z is like your vision. It's where you kind of want to end up. So if I'm using me as the example, all I knew when I was in the transitionary point was I knew I didn't want to be an employee anymore. I
Mm.
knew that I was meant for something more. I knew I wanted to design my own life. That's all I knew. I knew that much. And the A is, where are you now? Well, where was I? I was at an employee job, right? And B is your next step. And that is where faith comes in. Why is it faith? Because you don't know what C is. But
Right.
that's the secret. Here's the big secret. You don't need to know what C is. And you won't know what C is. And let me tell you, C is oftentimes scarier than you thought, but it's oftentimes way cooler than you could have imagined. Call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever. When you're in your motion, like, that's been one of the most cliche things too, is as I started stepping into it, seeing the stuff that unfolded. And I'm like, I could have never planned or orchestrated that. So that's one of the things that helped me, is just trying to develop the habit of what's next. What's the next step? So for me, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was an employee. And so I trusted by just quitting. And that's what I did. I was like, again, not recommending this. People need to check their Z. They need to check their vision, what they want. But for me, I had tried having side hustles along my corporate gig. For me, that didn't work personally because it just was my crutch. I'm more of an all or nothing guy. So I needed to burn the boats so that I would move forward. So for me, I didn't know. I just quit my job cold turkey and said, okay, now what's next?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think you and I would agree that I find a lot of people, they maybe they have failed at something
Oh,
and they're just
that's
terrified,
happened a lot.
terrified to fail again. And so they
Yeah.
never try again. But what can you share with our audience about if they only, continue to be brave? What joy will they find, when they do start to find that success? Because they're determined to, and they will, if I believe, if they're persistent.
Agreed. First of all, I would take a half step back and please take a step back and redefine failure.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
many people have this, again, this for like this unhealthy conditioning of what it means to fail. It's so weird. We, especially in entrepreneurship, by the way, we have all these scare tactics of, did you know that 96% of businesses fail and all this stuff? I got really lucky because I had mentors while I was in the corporate world, actually, um, when I was in college, because I went to college for business with an emphasis of entrepreneurship, and I got to connect with some amazing entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I was taught was it's never about the business, it's all about the entrepreneur. Okay.
hmm,
Now this is so huge. If you realize it's about the entrepreneur, it's about improving you as the individual, never the business. So when you look, some of the times in like we would do these group projects, and entrepreneurship is all about trying something and like making a hypothesis, experimenting. It's a lot of trial and error. It's finding what works. Sometimes an insight makes it so that closing down the business, that particular business, is the best idea.
right.
And that should be celebrated, and it's not,
Hmm.
because we're focused on the business instead of the entrepreneur. It should be about focusing on the entrepreneur. So if you realize that failure or whatever, and you take a step back, you say, well, did I learn something from that? There's so many things that I tried that didn't work, but every single time it didn't, I either got an insight into people or I got an insight into what I liked. We never beat ourselves up because we try Asian food and it tastes horrible. We don't say, oh, I'm such a bad person because I don't like Asian food. No, we go try something else.
Yeah,
And for some reason, we take it way too personal in entrepreneurship. So I just think if you really define that, then it does the second part that you're talking about, which is keep leaning into what feels like the right thing. And it's easier to be brave because it doesn't feel like failure such a big deal, because it's really just an opportunity to learn about you. And as you learn about you and keep trying and different things with you, then you uncover things like, oh, I want to build a business that's forward leaning, like social media management, or, it's like, I wanted to write a book, or I want to do something to help the planet. So I want to do something with solar. These were all little pieces that I didn't know. And there's businesses that I started for like a weekend or 2 months and didn't do
right.
because I jumped in and tasted it like, yeah, that's not it. So I think if we keep the focus on the individual, then we're golden. And one other point to hammer this home, in the corporate world, I think we have this right. When somebody leaves a business, we never say, oh, the business did not work for them one way or another. Let's say they quit the business. We don't ever just say, oh my gosh, businesses are failing everyone because that person quit. But for some reason, we scare people all the time saying, do you know that 90% of businesses fail and stuff like that? And it's such a scary thing. And while all those stats are true, I've survived every single one. It's been a stepping stone to something else. It doesn't feel like failure. To me, it's an irrelevant stat. And so if you keep the focus on making yourself better as an entrepreneur, you cannot help but win.
Right, right. You talked about a little bit about mentorship, and the
Yeah.
importance of that. Now, I know, a lot of people I've talked to have had strong mentors in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's family or like you and someone, it sounds like, in school. But what about for people that maybe don't have a supportive network?
Yes.
How can they create that for themselves, in your opinion?
Oh, such a good question. This is a huge issue. Um, I did not have it when I quit. So when I quit, I left Utah and went to Southern California. Had zero connections. Brought my wife, my 1 year old. We packed up a U-Haul and left. So literally started ground zero, nothing. So here's something that you can do. Start finding other crazy people like you based on interests. So anybody can do this from anywhere. If you're watching this, you have an internet connection. So I'm all about events. What you're doing right now is an event. This entire thing is an event. So what's really, really cool is having somebody like me or Dave Meltzer or Nick Santanasasso, all the people on this amazing event, like those are all cool people. But guess what? Not everybody's attracted to us. Not the whole world is not going to watch this, but there's going to be this niche of people that are attracted to this type of a thing. And those are your people. So while you should be watching awesome content, and as much as I love all the people that are on here, the people that are really awesome are the people that are going to be watching this too. Like if there's a Facebook group, like connecting with that and going where those people are. When when we have our new normal and we can start like actually rubbing shoulders again and stuff like that with coronavirus, then go to real events. And yeah, it's awesome to eventually hire a real mentor, which I have done many times to speed up the process. Something that anybody can do is buy an online course and get in the Facebook group. Go to an event where your types of people are, because here's the thing, like this is one of the most lonely transitions in the history of transitions.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate, like I just know it. I've talked to so many people and I know how it felt, and it's so fresh. I get the pain because we're the crazy ones. You're going to leave your secure, safe job for something that may not even work out. Are you insane? Like you're going to have that. Like you're going to be the weird one in your family and in your circles.
Yeah.
So how do you get that mentorship in that group? To me, when you're feeling like a fish out of water, you got to get around other fish out of water, other people that are doing it. And the cool thing is those groups of people are also going to be surrounded by other amazing people because they're looking to like a Nick Santasasso or Dave or anybody else that's on here. And if you start finding those pieces, then it can start by a podcast of those people, a book and stuff like that. And if you get to the point where you make a little bit of momentum, maybe you join a mastermind, big fan of that, or some other mentorship group so you can have it more one-on-one. But yeah, I'm a big, big believer in getting around the right kind of people to help you go faster.
Well, and I think you hit on it. You know, for those that are watching this later, we are in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. I think, what are we in, week 7 of lockdown?
I don't even know what day it is right now. Are we still in 2020?
Right. But you know what I love about adversity is we know that there is innovation happening right now. There is new collaboration. There's new companies being formed.
I so agree.
You know,
I'm so glad you're taking it this approach.
What are you excited about right now? I'd like to hear about that.
I genuinely believe that we're going to have so many amazing booms from this. I believe that, especially in the context of entrepreneurship, there are artists that were bogged down by a job that thank God they got fired or they got laid off. And so now they've made their song that they've been dying to make, or they have this business idea that they have been sitting on for the longest time and they haven't done anything with. You know, I think we're going to have music and businesses and probably just like there's baby boomers, there might be a COVID-19 baby boom. I don't know. Some people say there's also going to be a divorce boom because people are together and they're seeing that, oh, maybe you weren't the right partner. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. It's obviously very challenging and there's some things that are very tough to swallow with this entire thing, but on the net, I'm very optimistic to see what comes out of it. And I think I totally agree with you. I think there's going to be innovation that happened because that's where amazing things come when
Yeah.
you're hitting that adversity.
How are you shifting in your business personally?
So I've been focusing on a virtual solar business that I had been sitting on for too long. And so I'm trying to get that off the ground. It's still very much bootstrappy. Uh, Getting a lot of leads, haven't made a lot of sales yet. So figuring that entire industry out in a way that, like, I have never done it at this level, understanding financing. And I picked a state that looks to be booming. It's totally random in Minnesota, even though I'm in Arizona. So I'm really testing out this virtual thing because I'm not even there. So that's one thing. Like on a hobby level, I don't know if you can see, I got a piano back there.
Yeah. Oh, I have
Uh,
the same one.
so I this was a weird thing. I When I was 9 years old, I started playing this song that's fairly difficult, Für Elise by Beethoven, but it got really to the hard part and I stopped. And it's always been this nag in my entire life long. I still don't know how to play the piano or read notes, but I'm like, I want to know how to play Für Elise on the piano. And because of COVID, I can officially say, as of like a week ago, I can play the full song of Für Elise.
I
So
love it.
that's
You
one of the
are
things that,
out of this as a grown man, not
what's
a
that?
you're coming out of this with growth in your life. You're not just
Absolutely.
watching Tiger King. Nothing against Tiger King, but
Yeah, I've heard of it. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't done a whole lot of TV watching. I think I've watched literally maybe one movie
yeah,
about throughout the entire thing. So I've done a lot of walks because I live where we can do that. Of course, staying socially distanced and stuff, but a lot of walks, but mostly just staying home and going deep. Of course, there's ups and downs with the entire thing. Like one thing I'm open with sharing is like, yeah, there's been like emotional times where it just feels like so heavy and what are you going to do? But I don't know. I also like to like not waste it. Like don't waste the pain. Don't waste COVID-19. You know,
right.
like if you're feeling pain, there's something I've heard from I think it's Neil Gaiman, who wrote books like great book called The Graveyard Book. It's my favorite fiction book. But he's like,
Right.
don't don't waste any of your dark times. When you're feeling dark, create something.
Mm.
Create art. When you're stuck, create good art. You know, when you just got kicked out of your job, create good art. When you just got dumped from a relationship, create good art. You know, so that's kind of one of the reasons I did the piano thing. I I don't know. I'm still playing with it because people like Einstein had a violin whenever he was thinking. He went and did that. They say Churchill painted, and I'm being so intense with trying to figure out this solar industry and building this business being completely different states away. And yeah, I'll just
I love
have a
it.
little piano thing to play when I
Yeah.
need a little break. Yeah.
Now you have a very, very interesting history
Yeah.
um, in your life. You were actually raised in a Mormon family and
Just to
had
be clear, Mormon fundamentalist, which
Mormon
has a,
fundamentalist.
yes.
And you have, is it 44 siblings?
Yes. So that's hard for people to wrap their head around. So I'm going to go slow. So I, I am like the sixth of 12 kids of my biological mother. In Mormon fundamentalism, as opposed to regular Mormonism, Mormon fundamentalists still believe in the practice of polygamy. And they've been living it in the underground. My family's been living it in the underground for like 200 years, since 1886. And um, so my mom, my biological mom had 12 kids just by herself. But then I have three other moms that matched that. And so I have four moms, one dad. We all lived in the same house. And yeah, all of my schoolmates, classmates, best friends, call it whatever you want. They were all people I lived with, and they were all my siblings. So yeah,
I
I grew up with 44 siblings in one
Well,
house.
what I kind of is prompted this question is I asked you about, I find that most of our experts, they seem to have this guiding power of some sort in their life. For some it's God or, Allah or nature.
Yeah.
Is that still a part of your life? And
It's so yes. The short answer is yes. In fact, when I left the Mormon fundamentalism, because I'm no longer a part of it, that was a question for a long time. And at that point, and it's still true, I said, I'm actually more spiritual than I've ever been without it. Just instead of it being in a particular structure, it's my own way. But just to be totally transparent, it's shifted. And what I mean by that, it's I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is the universe. I don't know if it's something that feels divine within my heart, and to listen to that and let it guide me. I feel guided by something. But to me, that's been a discovery process through the last couple of years. And like I've had many conversations on my own podcast with people about this, or one-on-one after events. Being like, so what do you get like spiritual satisfaction from, and things like that. And so I do different practices, like I meditate and all that, but I also like writing. Like that's been one of those things to me, has been like a doorway to my soul, like just going deeper, where sometimes it overtakes me and I feel like it's not even me, you know. So I'm playing with whatever that guiding thing is, or where it lives, you know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely been a huge part of my life, because it's made me, or it's given me the courage to take steps that I didn't think I could have made on my own.
Yeah. Well, and I think, our world is so busy. And sometimes people, they just don't take time to even listen to that voice in their
I
head.
totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So
Um,
one thing that I do that I think I got to recommend this like crazy. It's been one of my favorite things that I've implemented. Yeah, this whole journey, crazy. You're going to have hitting the walls that you would not have ever imagined. And I tell you that so not to deter you, but so that you don't think, whoever's listening to this, that you don't think that there's something wrong with you when you hit it. But something I've done is once a quarter, I do this thing called a recalibration. And my recalibration is I disconnect from everything. Usually go, hey, Archie, I'm in the middle of an interview. I'll see you later.
oh, hi,
That's my
bud.
6-year-old. Yeah. Um, um, anyway, I do this recalibration where I disconnect from the world and go somewhere for 2 or 3 days. So it's usually not in my regular environment, but no cell phone, no social media, no email, and just disconnect from everything else so I can reconnect to this and whatever source is. So that's something that I instituted probably 3 years ago, and I do it once a quarter. It's one of my favorite things. So you just made me think of that when you talked about being super busy. And
Yep.
that's just one of my ways to stay recharged and yeah, feel plugged in.
I love it. Oh my goodness, we're almost out of time. I'm going to fit one more question in then, and your son reminded me of it. So I
Awesome.
know you have two children, right?
Yeah, 6-year-old boy Archie and 2-year-old girl Belle.
Okay, so I know you're going to make your millions, so you're going to have assets to leave them, but if
Yes.
you couldn't leave money or wealth to your children, only knowledge, what wisdom would you give them?
Um, it's so weird because this is so cliche, but I believe it with all my heart. I'm literally wearing it. I would leave them with this one statement right here.
I love
Stay
it.
curious.
Yep.
I believe that, man, that's the thing that is so special just about humanity, and particularly with entrepreneurs. Stay curious. Like don't let anything tamper that. Don't let society, don't let your family, like let that curiosity take you somewhere. Like be curious, could you make something better, a better tomorrow? Be curious about whatever that thing that you might think is your passion, like pursue that. And that's what I want to leave my kids. I want to make it okay to pursue your passions, to pursue your curiosity. We do that, like, especially with my son Archie, because he's older, he's 6. But anytime he's gotten into something, he's had phases of, I'm so into horses. And we're like, sweet, if you want to play with horses, do it. Or we go to the fair, I want to ride a horse. Then he got obsessed with dinosaurs. And he still is so obsessed with dinosaurs that he thinks he might want to be a paleontologist, and he knows about dinosaurs that I don't even know about. Like we went to a dinosaur museum and he actually got to meet a paleontologist and like scrape some of the stuff off a real bone. And right now he's into the universe quite a bit, and what different stars and different planets mean, but he's also really into Legos right now and building stuff. So my whole thing is, it's not really about, uh, this might be a very overly optimistic thing, but it's just my parenting style. I think that we don't need to like mold our kids so much. We just need to get out of the way. And so it like our style that Becca and I both believe in is like when he's obsessed about something, if he's curious about like Legos, then let's support that and find ways that he can like get into it, and he'll spend hours just building different things, you know? So that's the thing I want them to see through my life, through Becca's life, through anybody's life, that follow your curiosity.
Yeah.
And man, and that's sometimes against the grain of your entire environment. And
Right.
that's definitely what I've experienced in my life, from leaving something that was so live this one way, do this one thing, follow this one corporate path or whatever. I'm like, well, I'm curious about this. So
Mhm.
that's my answer. Stay curious.
I love it. I want one of those shirts. How do I get one of those?
Um, I can get you one.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. You've just been lovely. I know that you have a complimentary gift that you wanted to offer our audience. Can
Yeah,
you
yeah.
tell us about?
So one thing that would have helped me when I was getting started was just understanding that feeling out of your element is amazing and part of the process. And when you start anything new, and by the way, anybody that we look up to, chances are when they were at the beginning, whether it's a Tony Robbins or a Tom Bilyeu, like anybody we look up to, they hit that there was once the point where they were also out of their element, where they felt like a fish out of water, right? So I wrote my book Fish Out of Water a few years ago, and it's a book about how to go from awkward to awesome. Because again, there's so many people, like I think New Year's resolutions is a great example where people are excited to do something, but they hit this phase where they are completely out of their element because they're going after something new. The tragedy is once they hit that fish out of water stage, they end up reverting back. But in Fish Out of Water, I talk about how that stage is normal, but also the ways to get through it, to get to the other side, to create the life of your dreams. And I'm going to give the audiobook for free,
Awesome.
first Fish Out of Water. So calvinwayman.com/fish. You can get the audiobook of Fish Out of Water for free.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Calvin, you've been amazing. You are not awkward. You are awesome. Absolutely
I'm
awesome.
working on it.
I so appreciate your time. And to our audience, I thank you for tuning in. I'm just having such a good time, and I hope you're getting the value that I'm getting out of this amazing journey with these experts. So tune in next time to Corporate to Entrepreneur, and bless you all in your life journey. I will see you soon.